Welcome to another CEO / founder wisdom podcast. We have Ronsley Vaz with us. He is live from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. We're going to talk about podcasts today because Ronsley is founder at We Are Podcasts. He also leads Amplify, so CEO and founder there. Ronsley, can you introduce yourself to the audience a little? Hello, and tell us a bit more about your businesses.
Yeah, man. I think I am one of those people that had a corporate job and then became an entrepreneur. But a lot of my friends right now don't recognize me as anyone that could have ever had a job. So I went through academia. I got a couple of master's degrees. I went through corporate life and then started my first business about 14 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. It was a restaurant. 4 years into that, we did service on Saturday. On Sunday, the locks were changed, and had to learn to be a real entrepreneur from that point onwards. So I think that's when my real entrepreneurship training started. And I've started multiple businesses now and have been helping. I've helped over 1,100 businesses, brands, personalities start their own podcasts, grow their own podcast. I've started the first podcasting conference in Australia. Wrote the book, TEDx talk, got made a TED talk. And I'm a computer scientist by trade. So now just started a new AI company on the back end of We Are Podcast. So I'm pretty lucky. Feel like every day I'm living way past my pay grade. I've never done half of these things before, a lot of these things before. So learning them on the fly. But yeah, man, that's me in a nutshell.
Fascinating background. So you understood that podcast was hot. So that was like 9 years ago. How did you get on trend so quick? I wish I would have understood that podcast would be hot back then.
Well, I thought I was late to the game, to be honest. And when I got to the game and started to help people with podcasts or even do my own podcasts, I feel like there were a lot of people doing it way before me, like the Pat Flynns of the world or the John Lee Dumases, and they were doing a podcast before me. And I didn't know. I knew that it was a valuable business tool, and I was showing people how it could be this valuable asset to create media for your business. But, did I know that COVID would happen and make this whole thing explode and everyone know the meaning of podcasts? No, like I still sometimes forget that people know what podcasting is because it's a new thing.
Right. And why the niches that I see here? I see, for example, that the podcast, it seems that you help physiotherapy and digital marketing. So like these obscure niches, 1 or 2 or 5 men type of businesses. Do these folks need podcasts? Is there an ROI for them?
I think there's an ROI for a lot of people. So a lot of our clients are like actors and politicians, and even they require media for their brand to achieve different outcomes. And whether you're actually 1 person, 5 person, it doesn't matter if you're not creating media for your business today in 2023. Then there's a big piece missing in your business. And if you're not having business development conversations in your business, then you're also not, you're also missing a big piece in your business. So to have them all in one go, in one conversation is a huge advantage. So I feel like I'm biased, obviously, and I have seen it work in every situation. So I've not seen it not work if done correctly.
For podcasts, like what are the basics? Let's say I want to start my pod. Where do I start? Who do I invite? What's the name of my podcast? If people overcomplicate things, how do we make it simple for them?
Great question. The best thing about a podcast is that it's easy to do. The worst thing about a podcast is that it's easy to do. So what we'll end up making are usually an amalgamation of what we've already listened to. So if we've listened to certain types of podcasts, and when we create our own without getting another perspective, we just land up creating something that we've mashed together from our experience, right? So we're all business owners learning to be a podcaster. So I feel like for the people that have impact-based businesses, what I mean by that is they have a skill and they want to help other people with that, get an outcome. They're very kind of conscious about leaving an impact or making an impact and changing being very outcome focused. So for them specifically, it's about serving an audience. So the very simple start is, what is your truth? Start with speaking your truth. Like, why are you the person? Like, what is it about you that makes you the person that wants to have this impact? What happened to you that makes you unique in making this impact? So you start with your truth. Then you figure out who are the people that care about that truth. Never waste your energy or your intention on people that are not willing to listen. So be very specific as to who cares about that truth. Like, so if you start speaking something to an audience that doesn't care, then you're wasting your energy. So then you do an audience analysis, and then you say, okay, well, if that's my audience and that this audience cares about this truth, then who already has my audience and doesn't do what I do? So they are my partners. And then I co-create with my partners, and every conversation I have is a co-creation and a business development conversation that happens to create content that is for a particular audience. And that is, in a nutshell, very simple to execute and will always return on investment.
Love the approach, but I feel that sometimes partnerships, when explained like that, people like don't fully understand. So can you give me a clear example of a partnership that you've done and has been hyper successful in the podcasting realm?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a partnership is not what happens during the conversation. I mean, it is what happens during the conversation, but it's also what happens after the conversation, most importantly. So in a lot of instances, the relationship is built in the conversation, and that's what I do. I just kind of have the conversation to build the relationship, and then what follows on from that is the best part. So if I have a weekly show, as an example, then I'm having 52 of those opportunity openers, and if one or two of them convert, which for me has been in various ways, like working with VaynerMedia, getting to do their podcast is like a huge opportunity that came from, like, what kind of right did I have, in the sense that's my self-talk that goes on, and I think it happens to a lot of people. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunities, and business and life are like these seeds that you plant, and then over time they return, they become trees, and they give out fruit. And then so I think our job is just to plant the seeds.
So in my case, let's say that I find a podcast that has a bunch of CEOs, right? That's the folks that I interview. What would that podcast be, or what type of company should I target? Because I'd start with a podcast interview, right? That is super smart. How do I get to know like which one of these companies have a huge CEO following, other than asking folks or asking GPT for it?
How would you know? Well, you'd know where your people are hanging out before they come to you. Like, that would be the research that of your current existing people. So if your current clients are certain types of people that maybe visit a business business hub of sorts, so they all go to a certain co-working space, or they all use a certain accountant, or they all attend a certain event. So that's how you kind of reverse engineer and go, well, who are my people already? And that's really important, especially in today's world. The people are claiming outcomes without actually having delivered outcomes. And that's when you do stuff for free so that you can prove your worth, and then start charging people for, if you're learning, don't charge people for that. Don't charge people for your learning education. And I think that's something thing that needs to be busted out there, like some entrepreneurial nonsense that's happening that should not happen. But in general, like, you use the people that you already delivered to and have already gotten an outcome as a basis, and find out who else they talk to, and then start there.
I know that they hang out on LinkedIn, right? That's how I got them with my cold email agency. I know the podcast they listen to, not sure how relevant that is, but Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, Humor Band Lab, maybe Tim Ferriss here and there, maybe My First Million here and there. My First Million is a good one for my potential audience. Then what apps do they use? Is it Canva? Is it LinkedIn, SalesNav, you know? And then I could reach out to these companies and find out, like, if there's a community, scrape that community, cold email, hey, do you want to come on? Then how do I know if they have a CO audience, you know? So would it be to reach out to Sam Parr and Sean Puri from My First Million, ask them to come on, and then like ask them for a shout out or something, or if I could even be invited to my pod, would that make sense?
Well, I think you just start with a give and just say, hey, I have this podcast, I have this platform. I would love to interview you on this. I and my people would love to hear this story. And this is this is my twist on it. This is why this is unique. And this is why it's not like every other podcast you've appeared on. And then sell your mission to them. Like, people love getting on a mission, not kind of doing it. No one cares. Like, after a certain point in entrepreneurship, you don't care about money. Like, someone's not going to, like, it's how much is that enough, right? You want to be able to, the whole thing to be worth your time and your effort and your brain space. I mean, me as a person, I'm so conservative about where my energy is spent, because there's only so much of that to give, and there's so many spinning plates. And if I don't spend the right energy in the right spot, then I feel like the day is wasted. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm curious for you to hear from you. As I mean, I've done so many podcasts, but I'm curious for you, like, what have you seen as doing this? Like, how has it changed you as a person having these kind of interactions?
Life-changing, game-changing. It's a flywheel. Another method that I was about to say is that I just scrape Ronsley's guests, you know, and ask them if they could come on. That's another top strategy I think folks can use. I mean, it's super game-changing, right? Podcast. I get to get like top insights from folks like you. I don't pay you, right? You probably charge $2,000 an hour or something like that. It's all free. I get you to ask you the very questions that matter to me. Can do that with GPT, but GPT doesn't have Ronsley's answers, you know? Maybe that there will be a Ronsley GPT soon that I will be able to ask questions to. Then connections, the network is just humongous, because when I finish a pod, I can ask them for referrals. Hey, can you plug me with the CEO of Starbucks right there? And they say yes. And then the CEO of Starbucks, oh yeah, he's my good friend. Then yeah, I'll come on. So that's like, okay, oh my God, I'm interviewing someone I look up to, just like you did with Gary Vee, which is my next question. Then leads, then clients, then repurposing the content, making YouTube shorts, making books, making Charles GPTs. It's just insane, right? Tell me about your story with Gary there.
Well, Gary was supposed to speak at We Are Podcast 2016. So that's initially in 2015 is how the connection was made, and where got his tickets. And it was interesting because we're just starting to know and learn about Gary, and Gary was just starting to like build his empire at that time. And it was great. I mean, it didn't land up happening because I wanted to create an event where the speakers would then get together, and Gary's like, and I didn't understand what he meant at the time. It's like, I wouldn't know what to do at the back of the room, man. And never got it until you kind of meet him and go, oh yeah, like, you know, he would never be able to sit at the back of the room. That's just not, like, he would explode or implode or something would happen. It was just not him. So anyway, long story short, that was the first. And then I started to build this agency, and that got big. And I was trying to understand operations. And I happened to be going to the States because a lot of our clients are in the States. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be here. And he's like, why don't you come to New York? We're running this 4Ds thing, and you can hang out and we can chat. And that's how it started. And from that conversation, we did the Sasha Group podcast, and we started helping their clients do the podcast. And now every time I go to New York, I get to work out of the Vena offices, which is kind of cool. Yeah, man, I'm just lucky, and I think that's the podcast what has done that for me. I feel like the podcast has, every conversation is like the seed that it gets planted in one way or the other. And it's just the reps. The reps matter. Just do the reps.
They do matter. I do think that with GPT, reps will matter a bit less because GPT will do the reps for us. And I think we'll be at the center of this web with an army of AIs. And that's another topic. But sticking to that one, it's funny because you started the pod saying that, oh, you thought you were late. I had that feeling with various businesses that I started, but not podcasting. I feel podcasting is like an old model. A lot of people are still running on 1.0 in terms of the software and how they operate podcasts. They still think it's like a radio show or something, like in the 90s. I think there's like still a huge opportunity. My question for you is, how have you seen podcast evolve? I mean, you've been more than a decade almost in the field. What turn is it taking that year?
As in how much it has changed in the last decade, right?
And the trends, for example.
A lot, man. Like in terms of ease to start, it has never been easier. When I started, people had to understand how to take an analog microphone and connect it into a digital interface so that it would go into the computer. And even that I would lose them. They would be like, that's too hard. Like, I don't know podcast. That's too much. Now there's USB microphones you just plug in. There's, editing software that removes ums and ahs like that. And by the way, I'm a computer scientist by trade. So I've got a master's of software engineering. I've taken 2 companies to ISO 9001 before becoming an entrepreneur. So now with AI, I'm like this machine. I've got this way that I've already started to think that's so different because I can communicate with the machines. And I have this experience because I've built all these companies and done all these things in entrepreneurship and provide all these different kinds of values. So I feel, yes, we're going to commoditize intelligence, but the people that are using the intelligence need to know how to use it. So there are different ages that have happened in just in our recent past, right? There's the industrial age that made this big difference. And we started to have machines, and machines started to be commoditized. Industry was commoditized. Then because of the industry and industrial age, we had information because computers were built on that. And we got to store information. So because of the industrial age, we had the information age, and that commoditized information. And because of those two, we now have the intelligence age. And the intelligence age is where intelligence is going to be commoditized, and it's already being commoditized, to your point. So when you're saying what has changed, a lot in consumer behavior, a lot in the way we consume things. When I started to tell businesses about a podcast, they would not even know what I was talking about. It's like, is it a radio show? When do I go on? When do I record? There was so many questions. Now all those questions are like assumed to be easy to deal with, primarily because we all went virtual through COVID. So we all started having practice to deal with this kind of situation. You know what I mean? So a lot has changed.
So I guess that bet has paid off for you. You were like, okay, let's start a podcast. It's the way to go with media and all the trends. And now it's been paying off for quite a while. In terms of business growth for the podcast agency, are you still making good and even better money than you were a year ago? Is it growing?
And we've reduced the prices.
as well. So like more clients plus like more access and more revenue, more profit margins as well with GPTs.
Yes, because I have used the global arbitrage. Though I live in Australia, I mean, I'm here now. I'm Australian by nationality. My parents are Indian. My parents live in India. They're Portuguese by nationality. And my company have just set it up in Dubai 3 months ago. My team is set up in the Philippines. They work full time, 9 to 5 in an office. And my clients are in the US. And so I've been able to reduce the price, but use global arbitrage to be able to make it more profitable as a business, more scalable, more repeatable, being able to change people's lives in a different country who are very well educated with the right training, can really execute a lot. And with AI, I'm able to give them superpowers that they didn't have before. So I'm able to like really help them get a skill that it would be super hard for them to get otherwise. And every person that joins our team, as soon as they can implement AI, get a 30% pay rise so that they start to execute. So yeah, definitely more productive, more efficient, and more profitable.
Okay, wait, what? The 30% pay rise, they get paid more if they use AI? Yeah, repeat that part.
Yeah, they get paid more if they can use AI in their workflow, because they become more efficient. They become more efficient. They become more accurate. They're better at doing things that they could not do before. For example, someone in the Philippines, their second language is English. It's not their first language. That they don't think in the language, which makes certain phrases difficult to get. So with the right superpower, which is the right prompt, you can take any broken anything and make it however polished you want it, or in whoever's voice you want it, or in whoever's writing style, and you can even mismatch. You can even say, think like Alan Watts and write like Mark Manson, but you got to have the intelligence to think on those lines to make those connections.
There we go. So much wisdom. And how do you get yourself to think that way is my first question. And then if you can even share more of your AI frameworks or prompt, that would be very appreciated.
Yeah. How do you think? Well, I think that's something that we spend less time on. There's a lot of consumption in our world and society today. So less consumption. So find more time to not consume and just be. I have a slot in the morning. So I've been waking up at 3:59 for the last 11 years. And I have a slot in my calendar where it's just nothing. It's in the morning, just looking out the window. And I think that has, weirdly enough, helped me massively in the thinking process, for sure. And try and write down whatever you think, or try to just doodle whatever you think, try to make connections between the different thoughts. That's my way of doing things. And then AI framework, I feel context is everything, and especially for entrepreneurs, CEOs, especially for first-time CEOs. So CEOs, now the term is misused a lot, right? What is a CEO? Chief Executive Officer. You've got to have an executive team that runs teams to actually be a CEO, technically. But that's kind of misused. So let's talk about founders in general, people that create. The biggest jump is going from a solopreneur to an entrepreneur. That is getting a team, or getting one person or multiple people on, because after you get that, you have to learn other parts of entrepreneurship that you didn't need before, like recruitment, processes, operations, culture. There's a lot of things that come into play once that's the biggest jump. And what tends to happen is solopreneurs jump and can't make it, and they come back and go, you know what, I'm just a solo person, which is totally fine. But what we did not understand in that process, going from solopreneur to entrepreneur, is how to delegate properly, because we just expected this other person to understand exactly what we understood without giving them the right instructions. And that's exactly how you think about prompting, is you have to give it the right instructions. Not only this is my goal, but this is my goal. And if this is my goal, I want you to act like this person who will be the perfect person to achieve this goal. And if you're this person, then you need these inputs, which I'm going to give you. And when you have these inputs, I want you to use these inputs in this step-by-step manner. And then when you do that, I want you to output it in this particular format so that I can read and process it. So that in itself makes a prompt more easier for the computer to understand, for you to understand, and then you really get what you're trying to achieve from, AI.
So the human does the quality part and then the bot just scales it to the sky. So that's the advantage of taking the time. If it's 1 or 5 minutes of your very deep concentration and focus, you give it the best prompt ever. Well, the bot can bring you that at scale. I think in prompting as well, giving examples is good, right? Of what you want to expect.
Yeah, 100%. And also start with analysis. Like you can take something that's already working and say, analyze this and give me a template from this analysis. And then from that analysis and this template, now apply that to my personal situation.
Right. Yeah. And always improve, right? So experiment, see what kind of results it gets you on a small scale. And then, okay, once you hit the magic point, then you can scale it. Love it, man. So much good advice there. We absolutely need a round 2 in a couple of months from now. Where can people find out more about you, Ronsley?
Yeah, man. Lucky to have a name like Ronsley. Very few people. So if you just Google my name, Ronsley, you should get a lot of my work. But yeah, I mean, we are podcast.com, aigeeks.co are the 2 main businesses right now. I'm trying to hone in and focus and streamline the branding. So AI Geeks